Jone Knapton lived in East Moline, Illinois, when she mysteriously disappeared from her home over the 4th of July weekend back in 2003. A few days later, her torso was found floating in the Green River near Geneseo, Illinois. Immediately, family and friends suspected her estranged husband, Larry, but police have never been able to make an arrest in this case. Did Larry murder and dismember Joan? Let's talk about it. Okay, you guys, this is a doozy of a case involving murder, dismemberment, with a little child pornography thrown in just for good measure. Yeah, let's get right into it. So we've got the victim, who is Jone Knapton. She was 46 years old and a native of the Quad City area. So East Moline is located right on the border of Illinois and Iowa. And like I said, lifelong resident of the Quad Cities. She was married but estranged from her husband Larry at the time of her death. The two were actually going through a pretty bitter divorce, and they shared together an 18-year-old daughter named Nicole. Now, Joan had a lot of friends and family that lived in the area, so of course they're all shocked when all of a sudden she went missing. So let's back up to the 4th of July weekend. So in 2003, the 4th of July actually fell on a Friday. But Joan had a big assignment due. She worked for a company in the Quad Cities called Kone. So she knew she wasn't going to be able to do all the usual 4th of July celebrations. She was going to be working from home on her end of this project. So she actually went out to dinner the night before on Thursday, July 3rd with her friends. And that is the last time anybody actually saw Joan alive. So the next day, the 4th of July, her coworkers, and actually they were coworkers overseas, so they were waiting for Joan to actually email her part of this work assignment, and they never got it. So by midnight, when they still hadn't got it, they became concerned because that wasn't like Joan at all. She was, consummate professional, never would have just blown off a work assignment. So their IT department looks, and they can tell that she never actually logged in to her worktop laptop computer. So they became concerned. The next day, so now we're on Saturday, July 5th, one of her local coworkers went over to check on Joan, and she wasn't home. Now, it didn't look like anything had been disturbed. In fact, the only things missing in Joan's house was her laptop computer that she used for work and her cell phone. But no signs of a struggle, nothing weird, nothing out of place. Her car was still there. Bit of a mystery. So, friends and family, they're like, what in the world happened? Nobody can get a hold of her. So the next day, I believe she was technically reported missing then, July 6th. So missing persons report is filed. Everybody is frantic. Where is Joan? Well, unfortunately, they didn't get the answer that they wanted. So on July 10th, a father and daughter who happened to be driving along the Green River near Geneseo, Illinois, spot what they think is a body floating in the river. So they call authorities. Authorities come. It's somebody's torso. It's a woman's torso. But of course, they don't know who that torso belongs to. So they start to do DNA testing, and in mid-August, they discover that it's Joan's torso. Now, here's where I know that the rest of her body was never found, and her head, her arms, her legs had definitely been severed, cut off. And her cell phone and her laptop computer were also never found. So now the family knows, oh my gosh, we don't have a missing persons. This has now turned to murder. Pretty much immediately, Joan's 18-year-old daughter, Nicole, files a restraining order against her father, Larry. Her sisters also believe that Larry is responsible for her death. So apparently, they'd actually filed for divorce in April, so a few months earlier, in April of 2003. And I've heard it was a bitter divorce. I don't know why it was bitter. I've never seen stories as to what actually happened for the demise of their marriage. But Joan had actually told her sister, Cheryl Ashcraft, that if something ever happened to her, Larry is the one that did it. Okay, so cops immediately start to look pretty hard at Larry. They search his home, they search his car, and really didn't find anything to connect him to the crime. Now, there is a piece of what I would consider circumstantial evidence. They did find that he had a receipt from Menards in Moline. Now, Menards, if you're not familiar, it's a hardware store. It's like a Home Depot or a Lowe's. He had on there recently purchased a saw blade, a pen light, and gloves about a week before Joan was discovered missing. Now, just because you purchase those things doesn't mean obviously that you have anything to do with her murder. My question is, did they ask to see the saw and the saw blade? Was it tested for DNA? I can't find anything that shows that they required him to show that. And frankly, at this point, since it wasn't really discovered that it was Joan's torso until mid-August, obviously Larry would have had a lot of time to clean up if in fact he did even still have those items in his home. So they're looking hard at Larry, can't find anything to connect him. To add insult to injury, because he and Joan were still technically married at the time of her death, he was listed as her benefactor for her life insurance policy. So he received $100,000. And even more shady, he didn't pay any of her funeral expenses. So her funeral expenses were about $10,000. He didn't pay for any of that. That was left to her daughter and her family to cover. Now, the family was not happy, of course, that Larry was going to receive this money, but it actually went to court because the insurance policy, or the insurance company, I believe it was Hartford Insurance, is like, oh, we don't know what to do because Larry is technically listed as the benefactor. It's not Nicole. And a judge decided that because Larry had not been formally charged with her murder, he technically by law gets that money. So very, very upsetting to the friends and family. So flash forward to, I believe it is 2005. Yes. In 2005, again, the cops are still looking at Larry, and they apparently find some things on his computer, and all of a sudden, Larry is being charged with 6 counts of child pornography. That's pretty shocking. That is pretty shocking. So, of course, when he finally went to court, which it took a while to get to court, his trial wasn't actually till 2007, her sisters were in the front row, and they, I think, pretty much felt like, yeah, buddy, you're going down. Unfortunately, the trial ended in a mistrial. So authorities decided not to refile charges against Larry, so everything got dismissed. And they've never publicly said what exactly was on his computer. I've never been able to find or research what it was that he got charged with the child pornography to begin with. So it kind of makes me wonder if, in fact, Larry is the main suspect. Is that maybe one of the reasons for Joan's death? Did she discover something and was going to go to authorities about it? I don't know. And of course, I'm sure that friends and family, I'm sure authorities looked at, other possibilities, but again, Joan was well liked. Nobody had a real motive for wanting to harm her or kill her. So, again, Larry really is the main suspect in this case. And I feel like her family and friends have done a really good job of keeping this alive in the media. There have been very recent stories about it. In fact, the last news stories I saw were in 2018, so 2 years ago. And again, they're maintaining hope that somebody's going to come forward with some information that's going to help them catch Joan's killer, whoever that may be. So here are some questions that I have about Joan's abduction and her death. So, I'm assuming because she never logged onto her laptop on July 4th, that she was obviously abducted and taken from her home sometime after her dinner she had with friends on July 3rd. Now, her home, I saw a little news clip of it, and it's in a very residential area. I mean, the neighbors are really close to one another. So I can't help but think, she would have had to have been forcibly removed from her home, since it didn't look like the crime occurred there. Now, I'm sure maybe she could have been strangled. Maybe she could have been suffocated with something over her face, something that wouldn't have, produced a lot of blood or made it a messy crime scene. But still, if you think about it, whoever did this had to get her body out of her house one way or the other. They certainly didn't dismember it in her home. So number one, you have to get Joan's body from point A to point B. So she was in somebody's car. you know, at some point. She was in somebody's vehicle, so I would think her DNA, you know, maybe not, but I would think her DNA would be in somebody's car. Number two, where was her body dismembered? I wouldn't think that if it was Larry that did it, is he going to take her home and dismember her body in his house? You know, remember, cops searched his house a few different times. So again, he would have had time to clean up, but I still think, gosh, that's so much blood. If you're dismembering a freshly dead body, can you imagine the amount of blood that's coming out of there? So then my next thought is, okay, would you take them in a wooded area? I don't know. I don't know. And then you'd have the blood all over your clothes. So those would have had to have been disposed of someplace. Also, I should note too, I forgot to mention that when cops were checking Larry's computer, they did allegedly find a map on Larry's computer of where Joan's torso was found. So again, between the receipt and the computer search, it seems very suspect to me, but who am I to determine his guilt? I'm not. The other question I have is where's her work laptop and her cell phone computer? Those two items were never found. So were they tossed somewhere? You know, and what kind of cell phone did she have? Because I would think they would either be able to ping the cell phone to find its location, you know, or get reports from the GPS towers of, I don't know. You know, on Dateline, they can always ping the towers. That's all I'm saying. Like, I find it odd that they weren't able to locate the cell phone or the laptop, but, you know, maybe it was absolutely destroyed someplace. I don't know. So that's what we don't know about it. We don't know how she was taken from her home. We don't technically know who took her. We don't know where her body was dismembered, and we don't know where her cell phone and her laptop ended up. So anybody that lived in the Quad Cities area, specifically East Moline, over the 4th of July weekend in 2003, think back. Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Also, too, you know, Joan's body would have had to have been driven to the Green River. Now, of course, I'm assuming this torso floated down a little bit, but Geneseo was about 25 miles south of East Moline. So did anybody see anything weird in the Green River, you know, during that time? So her torso was found July 10th. And from forensic testing, they determined that her body had probably been in the water since July 5th. Now, I don't know how exactly they would have been able to determine that, but obviously she was taken, killed, and then put in the river very quickly after her death. So somebody would have had to see something happen. So just really think back, you know, if you have any leads, if you have any clues, if there's anything that you remember, of course, I will put the number of where to call and report that to authorities. And, you know, there's an anonymous hotline too that you can call and report it. So I would really love to see whoever did this, whether it was Larry, whether it was somebody else, I would love to see them, you know, captured, brought to justice. I know that her sisters, her family, her daughter, you know, it's still very much, this case is still very much alive with them. And it's really, you know, difficult for them. The 4th of July weekend every year has kind of turned into a memorial for them, you know, because it is when Joan disappeared. So if we can help bring this killer to justice and find this family some peace, let's do it. Hi guys, thanks for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to receive notifications of when I upload new videos every week. And be sure to check out my Instagram account, Murder in the Midwest. See you next time.